today to visit right now with Cole Cubelic from the SEC Network and JOX FM in Birmingham, and also co-host of a new show on the SEC Network, Read and React. That's on Monday nights. It's exactly what you would think it is. It's a recap of some of the interesting stuff from the college football weekend prior. Cole, appreciate, as always, your time. Let's start looking back to last Saturday night in Starkville. What you saw in that game from Mississippi State, especially offensively, is it what you expected to see?
I think a lot of it was, Richard. You're making that shift. You're going to be a run-heavy offense, a run-first offense. Now, I think we made it pretty clear later in the game that we were all kind of surprised that Will wasn't given a little more opportunity to maybe help Mississippi State go take that game, especially after reporting that I heard him over there saying while he was warming up, like, just give me the ball. I want to take this thing. I want to go get this thing. And then when I asked him about it after the game, he confirmed it. Like, yeah, I wanted a chance to go win the football game. And I think it's pretty cool that the quarterback wants to put that on himself. It wants the game in his hands. And I expected maybe a little bit more through the air, but stylistically, from a formation standpoint and what plays they ran, things like that, that's about what I anticipated it to be. I mean, that's what I had seen in the past, and I thought that's what the majority of it would look like once this season got going.
So there are a lot of Mississippi State fans that this week, throughout text messages and Twitter and everything else have said to us their hope is that what they've done offensively the first 2 weeks has been vanilla, and that Mississippi State is holding something back for LSU, that they're going to push the ball down the field more. Do you believe that that's a possibility, or do you think what you've seen for the first 2 weeks is what you're going to get?
No, it's absolutely a possibility. It's in the offense. I think shot plays are there. I think a little of this was by design. You think about the fact that you get into a game and you get a couple of turnovers. You get the feeling that this thing's going to be a win that you can kind of sit on. You slow.
Well, do you think the Mississippi State people just
still?
There it is.
Yeah, I think
we lost you for a second. We got you back now.
That's all good. I'm sorry about that, but I think the offense is absolutely capable of it. I do think some is being held. I do think some is not wanting to show things. I think some was the way that the game went very early, where they didn't just put their foot on the gas. And I don't know if that's the style football team that they're going to be, but it's definitely there. I mean, there's an array of routes. There's a complex route tree that comes with this offense. It can be called. It's just that we didn't see a ton of it Saturday night. And I don't know if that's ever going to be what they are first and foremost, but that's why they want to run stretch. That's why they want to run toss. That's why they want to run counter, is to set those things up.
You had a football coach that talked like a football coach to you in the post-game interview on Saturday night. That was that certainly made its rounds quickly.
He's a lot of fun to hang out with. He is, and I've tried to tell people, I've had some folks that have done their first TV game with him. They're like, man, that dude's tough, man. He's hard. We didn't get anything. And I was like, well, next time you have him, just talk football. I was like, because that's his love language, and like that'll get him going. And so it's something that I think we kind of focused on the first few times we had him, because he was a little bit gruff the first time, and then once you get him talking football, he's good to go. I love hanging out with him. I love talking football with him. I love being down there on the sideline with him, because I just think he's real. I mean, the intensity is real. The knowledge is real. The focus is real. I mean, he legitimately was sitting down there. I reported it on the game. Like, he was looking dead at me in the eye, yelling at me like, this game's over. The game is over. Game is over. And I was like, Coach, I'm not running the replay, but I appreciate what you're saying. Like, I have no influence on where this goes, but that's just the kind of guy he is, man. He's fiery. And you can see why the players love playing for him.
Hey, last thing for you on Mississippi State. So I did the Syracuse game this past weekend, and Dino Babers has kind of a love affair with the 3-3-5. He tried to hire Zach Arnett. Arnett ends up going to Mississippi State. He hires, I can't remember the guy's name, ends up getting Rocky Long on his staff now. Western Michigan, the defense they were running, Lou Esposito had played for Joe Lee Dunn at Memphis. Joe Lee Dunn's name kept coming up. It was just kind of this weird confluence of people talking about that defense. I see it happening in more places across college football. What is it about that 3-3-5 Rocky Long, Jolie Dunn, kind of coming back into vogue is difficult for offenses?
Yeah, the first thing, Richard, is it is a bear to identify. And so you think about normally you're going to have a nose guard head up on you. So a lot of what you want to do when you identify defense is you want to even out the front. So you want to split the defense. And a lot of that's based through protection where we have a point linebacker and say it's 55 and he's off the ball right over the center. So I designate him my point linebacker. We know we have him and everything left in pass protection. The quarterback and the back are responsible for everything right. We're not helping over there. That's sort of how you even things up in protection. Now, we could go a step further, and actually Coach Arnett and I had a long conversation about this, the epidemic in our college football world right now that is slide protection and gap protection that people are overly reliant on because they don't trust their offensive lines to try to block people, but that's a whole nother show for a whole nother day. Okay. When you put a zero nose on me, now my point linebacker immediately is going to be offset. So it's probably going to be to the right, yet we're going to be hot left. Well, that means I'm going to probably have to pull the right guard to come work with me, even though we're working left. So it forces things to not be evened out. And then in the run game, having that player over the center is tough to deal with because if he plays front side, we're going to the right and he stays in the A gap to the right, I better be able to reach him and I better be able to handle him. If not, my front side guard's got to stay with me. Well, that's going to keep him from going up on the back. And then if my backside guard can't get in there to help me and he's kind of playing things backside, well, I have to stay on longer and I can't climb up. So there's a lot of complications that can be caused by playing a zero nose most of the time. You don't have to do it all the time. And then just the identification of what the front is and who the hot players are, who the Mike linebacker is. The designations are very difficult. And then the way that they play gaps and the way that they're able to knife and do different things. You look at how TCU handled things last year. And that was a defense that had a lot of run through, a lot of run pressures, a lot of stunts, a lot of blitzes, and just you have to be ready for that because they happen quick. And then to go back to Jolie's defense, and that was the joke that I was trying to make with the cowbell during the game, and I think some people didn't like it, but I was kind of making the joke of the fact that I never beat this team, so this is not real fun for me to sit here and ring a cowbell. It brings back a lot of bad memories. But that defense specifically, all of a sudden you got nobody with their hand on the ground. And you got 320-pound D tackles and a 210-pound safety and a 250-pound linebacker and a 280-pound defensive end, and they're all just walking around. How do you designate that? What do you call that? So, we had names that we would call it, and we had certain plays we'd run against it. But if it's pass protection, how do you number that up? We got to the point year 2 when we played it where we would literally just call out a number individually. I would say 95, and the right guard would say 56, and the left guard would say 92, and we would try to sort it out that way and just man it up. Well, most of those guys aren't coming, so it's just a difficult defense to diagnose, to designate who's who, and then so many different things can happen. It makes it tough to manage the majority of the time.
You will be in Oxford this Saturday night for the Ole Miss Georgia Tech game. There are a lot of Ole Miss fans that have watched the Rebels through the first 2 weeks, and they've said, "What's wrong with Quinshon Judkins? What's wrong with the offensive line?" As you have studied for this game, and you've watched this first group on the offensive line, what do you see?
They're not playing great football together. I think individually there are a couple of guys that have done some good things at times. I've seen Micah Pettis do some really good things, and I've seen him do some things that he'd probably like to have back. Quincy McGee is a guy that's playing from a physicality standpoint, from an effort standpoint at a high level, but they don't seem to all be on the same page. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, Richard. I think it's a lot of college football right now. I've heard from more coaches in TV meetings and on the phone that I've talked to and seen actually in some press conferences just saying, we don't know exactly what we have. We don't know exactly who we are. We don't know exactly what we are. I think some of the turnover is beginning to become a little bit more difficult to deal with as far as getting everybody game ready. And you think about the lack of contact that you have, the lack of physicality in fall practice. I think if you were to go back 10 years or 15 years or probably even 8 years,
we got a minute
those
left.
Players coming out of those camps, they would have been still ahead of where these kids are having played 2 games because we had more physical practices in fall, more physical plays that we played full speed than these guys have had after playing 2 full games. So there's going to be an acclimation that comes with it. There's nothing wrong with Quinshon Judkins. They're facing overloaded boxes, and the offensive line just having a couple of letdowns here and there. But it's opened up a lot of stuff that's happened in the past game. So it's not all a terrible thing that's been happening up front for the Ole Miss offense.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out as this season grows. Cole Cubelic, Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers, SEC Saturday night from Oxford this week with Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. Cole, thanks as always for your